Hello everyone, and welcome to the Beyond Laser Mapping tutorial and webinar. And today we're going to be talking about everything about laser mapping, how to make a show, how to zone it, how to do setup in the Action Beyond Beyond itself, how to set it up, how to set the zoning up, and also creative things like what effects to use, how to set up timelines, and everything along that. But first, we're going to talk about, I'm going to show you a quick demonstration of a few types of shows that we'll be taking a look at. So the first type is a surface mount show. Basically, this is a type of show that is using a flat surface, like a basketball court or a ice rink or a football pitch, which has lines on it. We're just trying to accentuate. We're just trying to make the lines look bright and basically draw the lines out. And the other type is a depth type, and we will talk about that in a moment. But first I want to show you what this looks like in a timeline. And we're going to take a look at it, what it looks like in timeline and here, and then we're going to take a look at what it looks like in real life. So this is a show that was made for Laser Wolf Effects for their client, the Oklahoma City Thunder. And we have this show used 4 laser projectors and 4 zones. And you can see them here. And the colors are showing you which ones are which. So let's take a look at this. Okay, so that's what it looks like in in the timeline, and here's what it looks like in video. And then another type of show I'm going to show you here is a surface mount show. So here's an example from K-Vant, and I believe this show is programmed by Martin Gabco. And what we can see here is that have this castle, and they're drawing both the windows, the outlines, and accents of the building itself, and creating that look. As well, they used some regular graphics and some beams as well. You can check that out on their YouTube. And then the last demo I have for you is very relevant to what we're going to be doing. So this is on my house, which we're going to be going out to here in a minute. And this is a show I made previously so that we can check it out and take a look. Everything that this show does, we're going to talk about how it was done and how you can do it yourself.
I'm falling for you, baby. What can I do to make you stay? The bassline's taking over. We've gone too far to turn around. So turn the music louder. my feet not touch ground. It's how many days and you're driving me crazy. Please can you stay even just for the night? I'm losing my way, but don't try to contain me, 'cause I'm still running late. It's how many days and you're driving me crazy. Please can you stay even just for the night? I'm losing my way, but don't try to contain me, 'cause I'm still running wild. Running wild. Oh yeah. Running wild. Oh yeah. Running wild. Oh yeah. Running wild. Oh yeah. Running wild. Running wild. Oh yeah. Running wild. Running wild. Oh yeah. You're making me colder. You make me wanna settle down.
So that's a show I prepared for us today. So now we're going to take a break here, and I'm going to go out to the setup. Oh wait, so first thing I wanted to do, let's talk about our setup today itself. So I'm going to show you two different setups. Here's the first one. We're using KVant 30-watt projectors. These have the FP4s inside of them, which is really great because they have the internal switch, so you can just daisy chain them between each other, and it makes it really easy. So I have two different setup options. The first one is this, where they are all side by side with each other, and then the second option is this, where they are stacked all up on top of each other. An interesting thing here is deciding which one is actually the better way to set this up. For a depth type show. For a surface type show, it doesn't matter as much, but for a depth type show, it can matter a lot. So based on my house itself, let me just see if I can get a cut in this video here. Yeah, that's a good one. So if you notice, my house is wider than it is tall. And that might make you think that we would want to use this type, right, to make it as even as possible. But actually, when you do this sort of setup, the problem is you have zones that will cut into each other and end up not ending in the same location. Because we have, it is wider than it is tall, there's more things that stick out and will cause shadows in different positions based on if it's sideways than if it is tall. So instead, if we use the one where they are standing on top of each other, then we will end up it'll allow us to not have as many shadows cast on areas and not actually being reachable by different projectors. So basically, if you're doing a depth type show, you want to try and do your projector setup in a way that is well thought out based on your actual what you're projecting on. For my case here at my house, it was best to do it vertical, and if you're not quite sure, the best bet is to do it on the shortest axis that you're projecting axes that you're projecting on. So if it is shorter, if it is not very tall but it is wide, you want to do the upright. If it's very tall but not very wide, you actually want to be doing this, which seems a little bit counterintuitive, but with experience you'll notice over time that it is actually better to do it that way, and you'll actually you'll have less shadows that you'll have to worry about over the long throw distances. So that's the setup. That's our house. That's what we're doing. We're going to head outside now, and we're going to take a look, and we're going to start learning how to do this, and we're going to start doing the creative process in the setup. So bear with me, and we're going to get to it soon. Okay, we are back outside. And as you can see, we are displaying a pattern. What I've done is I've created a bunch of drawings on the building itself, on the house. So I'll just start skimming through them as I talk. We have 3 kVant 30-watt spectrums doing all together. There's 3 zones on top of each other, all lined up to create it. Since this is a 3D space, it's a little bit difficult because I'm really close, and we'll talk about why that is the case in a little while. But just show you some of the lines I've created. And so what we're going to do now is we're going to go into the zones, and I'm going to show you how the zoning works. So just go to the projection zones, and I'll turn the zone on. So this is my main zone on the first projector. Basically, the idea behind doing it this way, so this technique is basically creating one zone over the whole space, is that what we can do is we can make sure that everything can be within this zone. And this allows us to have when we draw, not have to worry about drawing on different zones and different locations and worrying about which one goes where and lining everything up. Everything you draw is going to be within one sized zone. And for doubling it up, we have a second zone and we have a third zone. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take zone 2 here, and I'm just going to save this really quick, just so we can go back to it if I start to mess it up. But we like zone 1. Let's say we like zone 1 in this position that it is. And now we're going to go to the zone 2. So I'm going to add the zone 2. I'm going to reset everything about zone 2, all of the custom things. So now we have a second zone that is nothing to do with the first zone. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go and we're going to just start at the corners. So let's bring everything inside the area that we need to go out to. Please mind the wind. I am actually outside doing this. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to first start by getting the 4 corners close to the other one. Okay. And so you can see how they've started to line up. But they're not good enough. So what you want to do is you want to click on these the circles, and then with your arrow keys you can line it up better. Some at the bottom right. Okay. Now we're going to do the bottom left. And I'm just going to use the arrow keys here and line them up as best as I can. With the other zones. So just give me a second here. Okay, so now the all 4 corners. So now we're going to roll down on our resolution. We're going to go 3 by 3. And we're going to try and line it up. That was pretty close. We'll do the bottom center. And we're just basically trying to line them up as much as possible. Go to the top. Okay. We'll do the left center. Oops. Just get that, line it up as best as we can. And I'll do the right center. And I'll show you that. We're just gonna go. So as you can see, things are starting to get nicer and nicer, and closer together. So you're going to want to keep doing this. We go by 5 by 5. We find parts that we don't like. Usually I like to do it in a very nice pattern. So I'll go, let's go across the bottom first. So we haven't done this one. Let's see if we can line it up. It's in the bottom between the left and the middle. Right there, that seems to be the lineup. We'll go to the right side on the bottom. That seems to be lined up. Go up a tick. That seems to be quite lined up. We'll go in the middle. This one needs a slight adjustment to line up the best we can, like that. We'll go over one more. You just have to do this to get them all as close together as possible. This allows you to have overlap between these zones without it looking weird or odd or whatever. So you just have to go back and forth and do this. As you can see, at the bottom 2 rows look very spot on up to the center. And I'm going to do this all the way just so you can see how long it takes, so you can help estimate how much time you need to plan for this part of the thing. So just keep watching. We're going to go through this and do it properly. Okay, that lines up. Let's check the center line. Center line is still good. And get it as close as possible. Let's go up this far side. Good at looking is good. So here's an interesting thing. On the far past the house, it's not lined up, but the line on the house is what we really care about, because we're not going to be projecting. We're not really worrying about the trees behind. So we're going to ignore that, and we're actually going to line it up based on what it looks like on the part of the grid that is on the house, and not the part of the grid that is behind the house. Okay, and this is another part. See how one part's closer, and you might be able to see it. I'm not sure if you can, but there's a discrepancy because these projectors are stacked on top of each other, and there's a slight difference of how they look at different distances. So I'm just going to find a rough in the middle that makes the most sense. So we're going to keep moving on. Again, this is a similar situation where some in the back, some in the front. Find the closest median that looks as close as possible, and you're just going to have to deal with it that way. This is, to help solve that, you basically just want to go as far away as possible for your projection distance. So now, these look really close. I'm just going to put it into the highest resolution. I'm going to adjust a couple little small ones to get it as perfect as possible. And you will get better at this as time goes on. You kind of get an eye for it. It's good to go in a pattern if you want to try and make it as consistent and not forget where you are and whatnot. Just go in a pattern that you like to go up. So I really like that. That looks really close. And if we layer the third zone on top of it, you can barely see that any other lines have been added. It just looks brighter. And of course, that was at a lower brightness. So you can see how it's up on the trees, and those aren't aligned up in the trees, but that doesn't matter because those aren't actually on the projection zone that we have. So let's pull that down. And if you see, when we play these, we should have lines that are pretty darn close to each other. And are not too far off. Lines that work across the board. So that is zoning. So now what I'd like to do is let's draw something. So I'm going to go to Create and go to New Frames Advanced. Now there's 2 ways you can do this. You can either do it with the vector-oriented or the point-oriented. If you're less advanced, point-oriented will make it the easiest for the most options later on, but vector-oriented gives you a little bit more power if you are more aware of what you're doing. The drawing tools can be more talked about in depth, I believe, in another tutorial, and if there isn't one, then we can maybe we can think about making that one next. But we're going to do vector because I'm going to show you the reason why it's good and bad. Okay, so what it is, I enabled the cursor, laser cursor, so we can see where it is on the house, and I just enabled it. So you can see where my point is, it's drawing on the house for those specific, that area. So let's make a drawing. Let's do this peak, let's do the window. Let's try the window up in the middle of the house. So I'm going to find where I like. I'm going to click down, we're going to draw, and we're going to find it. And what we're going to do is we're going to give a rough drawing right now because we're just, it's really hard to get it exact anyway. So we're just going to do that, and then what we're going to do is we're going to zoom in, and then you just change over to the point, the move/select point tool, and we'll just grab it and we'll find the best location for those. This helps if you have some light. We are obviously doing it in the whole darkness right now, but when I originally drew all my frames, I did it in the when it was still light out because you can kind of see both the light and the line where they are. So you can get the best shape in drawing. Just going to continue here, try and make this as best as I can. Okay, like that. And so you can see on the house in the video, that is what it looks like, and that's what it looks like in the software. So you can press OK. So now we have that shape for that window. Now, if you used a point-based effect, a point-based line, then you would do is you can have your color effects would be they would look like this. Let me show you. They look like that, so they scroll evenly because there's a bunch of points, and it works just like as it is. But this frame, because we use the vector-oriented, we have it in sections because that's how it is calculated in these effects. If you go point-based, it counts the vector points ends, not the points in the inside. So to fix this, if you're using vector-based, you can use a resampler. So all these frames on here have been resampled. So if you look here, we have a resampler. And what this does is it basically allows vector-oriented frames, which this is, to be resampled into points. This allows you in the frame to edit it very easily. Instead of by points, you can do just the edges, but also have the versatility to do the what you need with the resampling afterwards. So that is how you do that. So you can draw whatever you want. You can create long lines, short lines, whatever, and that's how that goes. And that is the main way I like to do the that's how I like to do the first type, which is we're using the zoning for that's how you draw it out and stuff. And that's using the zoning type where the layering zoning type. If you'd like to do it a different way, if you don't feel comfortable and you're more comfortable with also 2, what you can do is let's just make a we'll call it A1, and we'll just do A1 and A2. So for A1, what we're going to do is we're going to bring it up just a little bit so that we can see it. Let's say you want to divide it into 2 sections. So that's fine. What we're going to do is we're going to go into the freeform mesh, and I'm just going to bring this up into the garage area. So the section of the house that is just the garage, we are going to do in one zone. And then what we'll do is we'll do everything in the house in one zone on that, and then we'll do the other zone on another one. So we'll do that. I'll bring it up to the corner if we can find it. There's that corner. Okay. And then we'll take this one and we'll find the other corner. Okay. And we're going to just make it a 3x3. I'm going to shift it over to what I think looks about the middle. We'll take this end, shift it over to the edge, and we'll shift this one over to the edge as well. Okay, and then what we're going to do, that should give you everything you need to know, or that should get you a zone like that. So we'll call that zone 1, and then we'll do A2. That needs to be on the separate projector. Okay, we'll take zone 2 here, and we're going to do the other side of the house now. We're going to shape it so that we can see everything. And now that this is at night, it's a little bit harder because I can't see the actual house. But we're going to basically just try and fit in the edges of the house as much as possible. It's that edge. And see how if I bring it down to match the roof line, we miss some of that peak. So I'm just going to bring this up and I'm going to try and even it out. Like that. Now, go back to 3x3. And we'll try and line it up as best as possible. And we'll pick a location for this, like that. And then we'll do that. Now, and then what we do is we do a also 2 zone. And this would just be we would assign it to a projector that doesn't exist, and then we would do an also 2, and we would add A1, and this would be 0 like that, and then we'd add A2, and we would do 0 like that. So now we have those two zones creating the whole thing, and you can do the same type of drawing, same exact way to draw. The drawback of this is that you cannot double up later on in programming to make something brighter, because each projector is already assigned to a section of the house or whatever you're projecting onto, and you can't distribute your points, overall points. This will make a lot more sense when we start to do a timeline, when I do the timeline explanation. So that is how you do that type. And then the future is distributed scanning, and I'm going to show you basically for distributed scanning, if you don't want to do manual in the programming, you can do the distributed scanning, which will be in 4.0, which is not a public version yet, but following the distributed scanning, you basically create all those zones similarly the way we did in 1, 2, and 3, where they're layered. And then instead of manually distributing the content in the timeline, which I'll show you how to do in the timeline section, it will do it for you. So the setup is the same way, just have to refer to how the distributed scanning actually works when you look at the distributed scanning in 4.0. But that is not available publicly yet, so don't concern yourself with that unless you are actively testing and using the beta, or this is the future and the beta is out. All right, let's talk about setting up a timeline for this, and I'm still outside, so it's a little cold, and if I shiver and there's wind, that's why. But so this is how we're going to set up a timeline for this. We have 3 projectors, so we're going to do it all set up for that. So I'm just going to make the first few here for the first projector. I'm going to make it look nice, which makes it easier down the road. So I assume that I'm going to need about 4 tracks per laser. If we think about how many of these we could put on one projector before it starts to flicker, we will, I assume that it would be 4. I mean, you could do 6 or more, but you can add them afterwards anyway. So I recommend starting with 4. So let's add another 4. Oops. Properties, and we'll just make this one yellow. That's the same color by chance. Yellow. Yellow, I think that's the same. And this one we'll just do in blue or whatever. 4 of those. And these will be our 3 lasers, and each one will have 4 tracks, so that we can add content on top of each other and whatnot. I'm just going to change this color to be a different color because I don't like that color. That's the only reason why. We'll make it a blue like that. So now all we're going to do is we're going to do 1, 2, 1, 1, 1, and then 2, 2, 2, 2, and then 3, 3, 3, 3. So 2, 1, 1, 1. And everyone knows how tedious this part is if you work in timeline a lot. Okay, now we're on number 2. So the yellow is the second projector. Sorry, I'm wearing a glove while I'm doing this, so it's not perfect. And now we're on to number 3, so we're just going to make these last 4 tracks go to projector 3. Now, if you're doing also 2, you would just add also 2, the also 2 zone to all of these, and if you were doing distributed scanning, you would just do the distributed scanning zone on all of them. But the manual is better. The manual distribution is better if you have the time to do it. So I would use the distributed scanning more as a backup than as a first choice. It's a great tool and it works great, but you can get more brightness in the end out of this, and I'll explain exactly why soon. So that's how you set that up. You'd add an audio track, and then you would do you'd start to lay content out. So I think I'm gonna pull up, and I think I have a bunch of stuff here. Potential laser songs. Let's do that. Oop. That's the song I want to do. Okay. So this should come through for you. So what we're going to do, I'm just going to show you a couple tricks inside of the timeline. And I'm going to make a few effects, and I'm going to show you what you can do. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to have I'll show you a show that I wrote so that you can, and going through a couple of the elements inside to show you exactly. But I'm going to give you quick little examples of how you can do this first. So we're just going to pull up the workspace. We're going to go to the resampled page because it's better. So just for fun, what I can do is we're just going to do a couple quick hits on these sounds. Where is it? These right here. So I'm just going to grab that. I'm going to find that's front. I'm going to drag it out a little bit. I'm going to add a fade out. So, oops, right here. Like that. And we're just going to copy and paste this on each one. Paste. Paste. And paste. And I'm just going to do the 4 windows to all of these. So I'm just going to drag in those 4 elements. And so now, let me show you the actual video of it in real life. Just give me a second. And let me just make sure that's in focus. Okay, so now if you look at there, cool. So that's just a simple little thing. All we did was fading out and doing them on the hits. We'll copy this out. And we'll do it again. One more. And we'll do it one more time. Okay, cool. So we've added that. Now that's a simple way to do it. You can just do hits, and I would say you can chase them like that. So you could similarly do it. There's a drum fill here. So let's say this is continuing to tick, but we want to do some more. So we want to use that. We'll use these 4, right? So you could do a very similar thing, and we're going to do that on projector 2. And we're just gonna, all we're gonna do is we're gonna make it shorter. So I'm gonna take that fade on that edge, I'm gonna bring it in like that, and we will copy and paste it. Oops, that was X. Again, I'm wearing gloves. Excuse that for now. We'll do, and we'll do it all for all 5 of those. Okay, and I'm just gonna add a chase of these, and the last one we'll just make it be that whole area. So now we did the windows for the click, and now for this drum fill we're doing part of the porch. Oops, there's still a, where is that? Oh yeah, that's still the thing. And for this we'll just do one big hit on that final drum hit, like that. So there you go. So that's how you can utilize just fading and whatnot. One of the most useful tools you'll have when you're doing laser mapping is the visible points tool. So to give some more flavor to this, instead of it just being a hit, we can do visible points. Let's put it at 50, 50, the beginning, and then by middle of the road we'll go zoom back out to defaults, and then we'll do a deceleration. Oops. So now it draws outward, and it'll fade out. And that's a visible tool. Visible points is a great way to utilize, to allow. It's one of the most powerful tools you're going to use for laser mapping. So now you've done a click. Like that. Now let's listen to this real quick. Okay, so I'm going to cheat a little bit, and I'm going to show you another way to use some cool effects. So what I want to do is, for this whole section, right on that kick, what we're going to do is we're going to pull in a couple of my large drawing shapes. So that's over the porch, over the frame of the house, and we'll do part of the shape inside of the over the garage. Now what I'm going to do now is I'm going to use a third projector for one of them, the second projector for one of them, and the first projector for one of them. So now, if you notice, they are all equally as bright as each other, because what I'm doing is I'm using all three projectors on three different locations. I'm just going to drag these out a little bit, and I'm going to show you a quick way to make a really cool effect that works really well for this. And that is that effect is key color. Where is it? Color noise. Color noise is an amazing tool. Use it. We're going to add some, and we're going to basically bring it down. I want it to be pretty light, so we'll put it up to around there. And what it does is it vibrates, so you can have some nice, now I'm going to add more. I want it to be really tight. So yeah, that looks really nice, and we're going to copy the whole effect, and we will replace it over these other two sections. So now we have the clicking. And now we have that twinkling across the whole thing. And you can follow on the drums and whatnot. So that is color noise. You're going to really enjoy color noise. The next effect I'm going to show you, we're going to use, let's use, you know what, I'm going to do, we're going to just use the frame because it'll be easy to show. The next effect that we're going to talk about is using window clips. Now, if you've never seen these before, what they do is they basically they take apart, like they reshape. They like cause a clip, so they edge it. Right? Let me see if I can find it really quick. I can never rectangle clip in and out. Okay, so rectangle clip in and out is basically it makes a square that's visible or invisible. You get to decide, and it cuts it off based on its location and size. So window clip in means that if we make a thing, we can basically edge it, right? This is similar to visible points, except it's over on axes. So instead of being by point, it's by an axis. So if you notice, if we go to the edge, we will, or if I pull from this side, it cuts that whole edge at once because that is being done. So if I turn the rectangle to red, you'll be able to see how basically everything inside of this rectangle gets disabled. And so sometimes it makes sense to use a window clip where you can see the red, but it also sometimes makes sense for you to do it without. Now, it can be red, it can be green. You have these color sliders to decide what you want, and you can just make whatever color you want. But what that does is it allows you to clip things. So if you like it to go, let's say, well, we'll show you one of the best cases of these. So I'm going to show you, we're going to go open it up all the way, both sides, and then I'm going to go start my effect down at the bottom, and then by the end of this, we're going to drag this all the way to the top, and like this. And we just have to add a little bit of spacing at the beginning and the end, just so it actually draws out nicely. So if we bring these to the end and the beginning, we can now create an effect that goes up and down. And so you can see how that can be really useful. You can do this fast, obviously, if you want it to be a sweep. So let's say we want to use this as a kick. So let's do this. We'll do a quick kick. You can see how you could use a lot of things like that. And you could create window clipping. And you can window clip to the up, down, to the left, and right, and everything like that. The next thing that's going to be really powerful for doing one of these shows is what we're going to do is I'm going to add a bus. So if you don't know what a bus is, it's basically you can make it so that by default a regular bus just takes all of these and adds another layer of effects on top of everything. So let's say, okay, we want to set this up. So we want to do, let's say on this hit, right here, extend it to there. I'm just going to take this, I'm going to copy it across. Oops. Let's see here. There we go. Boom. So now we have all 3 projectors doing all that. So instead of just being one window, we're going to do a second window, a third window, and fourth window. And then we'll do this one. Let's say projector 2 is going to do the garage doors, and then the line over top and the line to the side. Okay. Now, and then the third projector, let's say we want it to do a cap, and we want it to do the other cap, and that's how we want to do it. So we're going to delete these. Boom. So now we have the whole house lit up in different capacities. So if we go back to you can see in the timeline how we have everything, and that way we get the best scan rate out of it all thing and whatnot. So now if we're going to add on the bus an effect, and we're going to do this, we're going to show you how this works. So if I take where was it, window rectangle clip in, now this will do everything I did. Oh, that's because that's playing down here. Turn that off. But now, as you notice, I can clip the whole thing using that bus. So if we want it to go from here to the end, we want it to grow out. So at the very beginning, we're going to go in. To the middle, we're going to go out. To the end, we're going to go over. You can watch. We can create these effects that go all the way across the house and doing different elements, and then all 3 projectors are doing working together to do it and keep it as bright as possible and as least flickery as possible. And so this can be done with the clips, or we can do, which is the big one that a lot of people want to know how, is that you can do color. So let's add a color effect. Now this is by points, so now you have across points, and each section is thinking about it in points, but we don't want to do it by points. Let's do it by y-axis. There we go. Now if we add some speed to it, we play it back. There we go. So now we have 10 lines, 10 elements all working together on the same axis. And the reason why this works is because we did it all on one zone and we're distributing it that way. If you did it with the also 2, you'd have a little bit more trouble keeping everything lined up. But because we did it all on a layered zone, these effects work brilliantly. And obviously you can use your imagination on how you'd want to do this. So let's just a thing that I like to do. Let's make a quick effect here. Black. We'll just do a white to purple. That seems like a cool one. Like that. And then that way you can have a really great effect across all of them, and it's distributed. nicely across all the projectors. And obviously, if you got smart, you could find the speed that makes sense for your song. And obviously that's going to require some fine tuning, but that way you can use these color effects like this and really in a really powerful way. So you could do it by radius, go out to in, and if you just did the speed the other way, so let's call it -100, you can do the same thing from the middle. And obviously you can adjust where this comes from, but you can do it over the y-axis like we just did. You can do it by the x-axis, and that way you can do some really cool stuff by doing it this way. And obviously by time, so it's the same across the whole thing. And that way you can, again, this really goes back to being able to distribute it across everything. You're going to find that using the buses to do this is really powerful. If you don't know how to use the bus really quick, if you go to right click on the properties, you can have everything is on a master bus automatically, but you can add extra buses. So let's say we want projector 1 to be bus A. We can select bus A on all those tracks, and if we add another bus, we can edit this bus. And we can say, okay, this bus is bus A or master bus. And that way you can add those effects on top of it. But using this sorts of on top of each other and layering it, you can create these really nice effects. Oops, I gotta go by, let's just do it by radius. You create these really, really powerful effects. Let's see, if we do, and you could do, obviously all the same multiplications work, so. There's a lot of really powerful things you can do that way. And again, it makes it so it's really bright, it scans really well, and you can do a lot of really cool stuff. Let's see here. I'm sorry if it's also a little distorted and speaking into the microphone as much as possible so that the wind isn't overdoing it. Let's see, I'm just checking my notes. Yeah, so what we're going to do is we're going to pause again for a minute here. I'm going to show you, and after we get back, I'm going to show you exactly how you can a more completed show using a lot of these things and how you can implement it. So quick overview. For the creative stuff, when you draw, you want to draw out these things individually into sections, because that allows you to later on compartment them and do them independently of each other inside of a timeline so that you can distribute them across, and then on top later using the buses to bring them all together again for the effects. That's something that keeps you from having to draw a full everything of the house, and then maybe you want to do only just both the garages together, but you want to have the effects together. If you use the bus, you only need to do every section that you want, like each section. So I want each window, and then I want this edge, or I want over the garages or whatever. You can do all that stuff and then worry about the effecting it later, and you don't have to draw, okay, a version with this side, a version with this side, and then a version with both those sides. You can just have each independent part. And then also, obviously, you can do fades, hits. Those look really nice. I would avoid things like size and position, because then that kind of defeats the purpose. But your color effects, your brightness effects, your visible points all are really cool and useful. Visible points is going to be one of your most important tools. Color noise is a great effect to give it some texture. Your window clipping in order to basically clip around edges, and then using buses to do all of your color and everything once you have whole areas of your house done is how you're going to utilize all those effects. So we're going to pause. I'm going to bring up a show, another show that I've created, and that way we can take a look at all those things, effects in position. And after that, we'll talk about all of the little nitpicky things that matter when you do these shows. So hang tight.
I'm intoxicated. I got a legend on the way. I'm falling for you, baby. What can I do to make you stay? The bassline's taking over. We've come too far to turn around. So turn the music louder and let my feet not touch the ground. Cause I'm in a daze and you're driving me crazy. Please can you stay even just for the night? I'm losing my way, but don't try to contain me. Cause I'm still running out. Cause I'm in a daze and you're driving me crazy. Please can you stay even just for the night? I'm losing my way, but don't try to contain me. Cause I'm still running wild. Running wild. Oh yeah. Running wild. Oh yeah. Running wild. Oh yeah. Running wild. Oh yeah. Running wild. Running wild. Oh yeah. Running wild. Running wild. Oh yeah. You're making me colder. You make me wanna settle down, down. Get married.
So that's that show. I just want to go through. I made it real quick. I made this show just within an hour or so, just messing around to see what we can do. And I just want to show you a couple of the things inside of it that I used in order to make that show. So the first one is this on the peaks of the thing, and then over the garage doors. All that was a rectangle clip in, just based on the timing. So you can see that there. That was used for that. Let's see here. Lots of color noise for those shimmery types of effects. Let's see. Where is the one? For this one, this was a color effect. Let's see here. For these ones where the peaks faded out to colors, to do those colors. See that? That was using this color effect, and you did it. I basically made it like this, add some speed to it, and then time shifted it so that right when it started, it would start to come down. Yeah, and then that way it would come right down, and it fades out nice and cleanly. It looks really nice that way. Right before the chorus, there's an effect here where they all kind of come inward like that, one hit inward. That is a similar thing. It's by Radius color effect. You can just see it here. Speed, time shift it just so it starts at the right time. Comes in from the outside, cranks right into the middle, and then goes into the chorus. All of these, like this animation in and out, that's just visible points on all those events. The windows during the chorus here. Here, let's play this back. All those windows, that's just more color effects. Color effects, visible points, and stuff like that, color noise. They're bread and butter of this type of show. You get so much out of them, and you can't really use rotation and position in as many ways just because, well, that defeats the purpose of mapping it out. So yeah, that's a quick overview of this show, and hope you enjoyed. Okay, so now we're going to talk about the best practices and things that you're going to want to keep in mind when you do this to help your show get better. So let's first talk about color, right? So luckily my house here is white and has pretty much, it's an off-white, but it's basically white surfaces. But there's also the black roof, and when you're doing this, you want to always try and hit the brightest, the most reflective surface. So when I did the basketball mapping, the lines I made weren't the black lines on the court. They were just right to the left or to the right or just under or above those lines, because the wood on the court was much more reflective than the actual black line. So the great way to illustrate this, if you look at the video, if we do here, let me do this. Let's show you this line right here, which is on a black roof, and then this line. If you notice, it's a little bit harder to tell than it is in real life for the to see the difference, but you can tell the difference between the brightness, and this is just the same amount of projector. It's all three of them distributing between both of them. It's just all three projectors. There's 90 watts total, and it's just on there. There's no difference. So you want to make sure you always hit the brightest surface. And the other thing you want to think about is, if your surface is not white, then you're going to be a different color. So a good example of this is like the chimney. So if I turn this off, and there's the other thing playing. There it is. The chimney is red. So the color it's hard to see on the camera, but the color is actually a different color, visibly different color than the stuff that is on this A-frame. It's a little bit different color. Let me see here. It's a little bit harder to see on the camera, but it's a different color. So when you, if you're mapping a basketball court or whatever, think about that. The color of the court is a different color, so you might actually need to go in there and go to your projector settings and go to your color settings and adjust your color settings to make it look more white, if that's the surface you're always going to be hitting. Or if you have a logo on a court and it has different colors, just make sure you are considering that, because if you put a white on a blue, then it's going to look mostly blue. And because that's the whole point, is that color is not going to reflect. So just be very, just think about that when you're actually drawing out these lines. So you don't draw on black as little as you can, at least. Obviously, like if I want this roof line, I'm going to have to draw on the roof line. I can't not draw on the roof line. It's just black. It's just, if I want to use it, I have to use the roof line. But if you can avoid it as much as possible, do so. So that's the color. It's a really important thing to think about. You'll notice once you start doing this a lot, the big difference it can make. It can turn something that is, let's say you have 40 watts total, you have two 20-watt projectors, it can make it look like it's a 6-watt if you just hit it back, versus if it's on a white or a brightest reflective surface possible. Another tip I want to give you is that when you do zoning, a really quick way to make it a lot more optimized is go to the effects, and then you add a key effect, and you add a delete dark line effect, and just to create a key at 2 is fine. What this does is that when you have these visible point effects, if you notice, we have 68 and 70, 69, 70. If I pull the visible points over, the scan rate goes way up, and it actually gets brighter because we're actually scanning less. So you can get higher frame rates and you can scan better. Now, the only thing you have to be considerate about is that if you notice, there is a tail now, and you have to make sure you plan for that. I didn't change it on purpose so you can see it, but you go into the blanking settings to adjust this and make this look correctly. So it can make it look a lot more neater if you use the delete dark lines in the effect. If you use this, and you just would put it on all of these zones. You notice they all went from. Notice how the brightness adjusts. We also get that tail and lose that tail. So if you decide to do this, can you just make sure you get your blanking settings perfect, so that those tails do not appear. So that's another thing. And the last thing I want to talk about is safety. Laser mapping is a great, really cool tool, but we want to make sure that we're safe always. Consider your surroundings. Luckily, behind this house I have trees, lots of very thick pine trees, so nothing is going through. But if you're going to use on a court or a stadium, make sure everyone is aware. Make sure you're just following the laws, and you're playing it safe. Because if you're using mapping, it can be a really powerful tool. But also, depending on what you're mapping, are people in the area? What can you hit? You really have to be careful with safety. So just my footnote here is just to make sure that you take safety seriously and be careful. Yeah, that's just my note on safety.
Thanks for joining the webinar. We hope you enjoyed, and we'll see you next time.